How nuclear bombs melt people, the flash and the fireball. Did you know that in the instant a nuclear bomb goes off, it can ignite everything in sight with a burst of heat so intense that it rivals the surface of the sun? Imagine being near the center of that fireball, a swirling luminous sphere that forms in the first few microseconds and expands outward with terrifying speed. The air becomes incandescent. The ground radiates like a furnace. Clothing, skin, earth, metal, all are bathed in a flash of energy that reaches further than the blast wave, further than the collapse of buildings. We begin in the skies above a city seconds before a bomb detonates. The explosion is neither thunder nor rocket roar at first. It is a white-hot flash brighter than any daylight you have ever known. That flash carries thermal radiation in the form of infrared, visible light, ultraviolet. It strikes exposed flesh, it ignites clothing, it sears exposed surfaces. Survivors of the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki described how the heat of that flash burned their skin immediately and knocked them to the ground before they saw the mushroom cloud. On the pavement, nearby victims received what are called flash burns, patterns of burns impressed by their clothing or by shadows cast by objects. In Nagasaki, the official Children's reference site states that just after the bomb burst, a fireball roughly 280 meters in diameter formed, and its surface temperature soared to an estimated value comparable to that of the sun. Pinghe art, the intense flash ignited fires, scorched skin, and caused burn injuries inconceivably worse than ordinary burns. At that moment, the human body is hit by radiation that is not only invisible but unimaginably powerful. Yet this is only the beginning of how nuclear bombs melt people in a documentary sense. What do we mean by melting? We mean that the heat and blast and radiation act together in a way that transforms flesh into charred tissue, bone into ash, patterns of clothing into burnt impressions. We mean that the body is exposed to multiple destructive processes at once: thermal radiation, blast overpressure, ionizing radiation, and the consequent fires. According to studies in a nuclear explosion, the initial stage of casualties is dominated not by radiation, but by the thermal and blast effects. In the first 1 to 9 weeks after detonation, about 90% of deaths are due to thermal injury and/or the blast wave. Let us float over to another royal disaster in the nuclear age, the moment when entire city blocks were consumed in firestorms triggered by the bomb. After the flash and the fireball rise, the heated air rushes upward and the surrounding air rushes in to replace it. That motion, combined with the ignition of flammable materials, produces a colossal firestorm. That firestorm can merge many smaller fires into one vast inferno, which can burn the survivors and destroy what remains of the city infrastructure. The authors Richard Wolfson and Ferenc Dalnoki-Vierzes note that the intense heat from a large thermonuclear explosion can ignite fires and cause severe burns on exposed flesh as far as 20 miles from a large thermonuclear explosion. Let us return to the mechanics of the human body in that moment. In the immediate vicinity of the explosion, the thermal pulse lasts seconds. It is so brief and so intense that the outer layer of the skin can be vaporized or charred beyond recognition. The clothing of a victim frequently becomes a burn map. For example, darker clothing absorbs more thermal energy and burns the skin underneath more severely because white fabric reflects more visible and infrared light. In Hiroshima and Nagasaki survivors, there were cases where flesh appeared to melt. Victims described skin and tissue peeling away, bones visible underneath, flesh hanging in tatters. One survivor of Nagasaki, Sumiteru Taniguchi, described that heavy burns melted skin from his back and left arm, and nerve endings were destroyed, so that he felt no pain at first. Behind all of this lies the physics of the fireball. At the moment of detonation, the bomb's energy releases as X-rays and other radiation which heat the surrounding air instantly. The fireball forms and becomes a glowing sphere of superheated air. That sphere emits intense thermal radiation outward. The ground and objects facing the explosion receive that radiation. For someone exposed with no shielding, skin may be burned, clothing ignited, and the body may be thrown into motion by the blast wave. The blast wave itself then collapses buildings, sends shards of glass and debris flying at lethal velocities, and adds mechanical trauma to the thermal injuries. In a nuclear weapon, the blast wave may carry half or more of the energy of the explosion. Now consider the term melting. It may not mean that bodies literally liquefy into a puddle like wax, but it does mean that tissues reach temperatures at which they coagulate, char, shrink, lose water, burn away, or calcify, all of which produce the appearance of melting. Metal coins found in Hiroshima were melted by the heat of the flash or the ensuing fire. The human shadow at Hiroshima also offers visual testimony. A stone surface where a person had been sitting was scorched around the outline of the body because that body blocked the heat radiation, leaving the shadow-like mark. That very localized evidence shows how intense the heat was. But there is more. The dose of ionizing radiation, neutrons and gamma rays, emitted at the moment of explosion also penetrates the victims. That radiation damages internal organs, bone marrow, tissues, causes cell death, and sets in motion a cascade of injuries that complement the thermal and blast trauma. In the close-in zone, the direct radiation adds to the severity of burns and blast injuries. For example, the bomb above Hiroshima, known as Bombing of Hiroshima, codenamed Little Boy, exploded roughly 1,900 feet above ground, and its lethal direct radiation radius was about 0.8 miles. Now let's pause and reflect on the human side of this. A person standing or crouching near ground zero is subjected first to the blinding flash. They see nothing but white light. Their clothing and skin absorb the heat. They may feel nothing initially if nerve endings are destroyed. Then they may be engulfed in the blast. They may lose footing. They may be hit by debris. They may feel intense pain from burns seconds later, or may simply die instantly. They may then be consumed by firestorm or collapse into rubble. Survivors describe the shock of looking at burnt bodies, or faces melted, or fluid running from wounds, or grotesque skin damage. One survivor said of Nagasaki, "Holes opened between my ribs and the movement of my heart and other organs became visible through the skin." At this point, we can say that the melting effect of nuclear explosions results from the combination of extreme heat, rapidity of exposure, and the vulnerability of human tissues. The heat is so rapid that the thermal energy doesn't spread deeply, but damages the surface layers with explosive force. Clothing becomes mask and imprint. The body may be reduced to a charred silhouette. This is how nuclear bombs melt people in real historical cases. We will explore how the bombs were designed and how these effects were foreseen by their creators. Did you know that the scientists who built the first nuclear bomb understood the math of destruction long before they witnessed its light? They could calculate energy in joules and temperature in millions of degrees. But no equation could prepare them for the human effect. When the first bomb exploded in the desert of New Mexico, they saw what they had summoned, a new sun rising from the earth. Let's float over to that dawn in July 1945. The test site was called Trinity. At exactly 5:29 a.m., a sphere of plutonium ignited in a desert tower. For a fraction of a second, darkness vanished. The sand beneath the tower turned into glass, later named *trinitite*. It was fused by the sheer heat of the blast. Soldiers who watched from miles away said they felt heat on their faces. One of them recalled the air tasting like metal. The light spread across the desert floor like daybreak compressed into an instant. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the director of the Manhattan Project, later said that one thought from the Bhagavad Gita came to him. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. But his team's work had just begun. Within weeks, the same science was turned against the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The bomb over Hiroshima exploded at 8:15 a.m. on August 6, 1945. It contained uranium-235. It detonated in midair to maximize its impact. That height allowed the shock wave to spread evenly across the city. The first second brought a flash of pure energy, light, heat, radiation, and pressure all at once. Roughly 70,000 people died almost instantly. The total would rise to over 140,000 within months. In the center, the temperature is believed to have reached about 3,000 to 4,000 degrees Celsius. That's enough to melt steel, to turn sand into glass, to vaporize human bone. Survivors described how their own shadows were burned into the walls behind them. One man said that people looked like blackened statues still standing, upright. The flash was so intense that eyes could not perceive what happened until everything was already gone. Let's drift to Nagasaki 3 days later. This bomb, nicknamed *Fat Man*, used plutonium. It was more powerful, but the city's hills reduced its reach slightly. Yet the results were still beyond imagination. The fireball consumed everything within a radius of 500 meters. Wooden houses vanished. Brick and tile melted together. People close to the epicenter simply ceased to exist. Their bodies vaporized or left faint traces on the ground. In both cities, the same pattern unfolded. The first second brought the flash. The second wave brought the blast. Then came the firestorm. Winds raced toward the center as oxygen was sucked from the surroundings. Fires joined together until they roared like a living creature. It was not one explosion but a chain of destruction lasting hours. Scientists studying these events later described 3 stages of human injury. First, thermal burns caused by the direct heat and light. Second, blast trauma when the pressure waves slammed the body against solid objects. Third, radiation sickness invisible, delayed, and devastating. But in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the heat came first. It defined everything that followed. Let's glide through the accounts of those who lived through it. A schoolgirl recalled that her white blouse was untouched, while her dark skirt burned into her skin. Another survivor said she saw people whose faces had melted, their noses and lips gone, their eyes sealed by burned flesh. Some carried their own skin in their hands as they fled. These images are painful to hear, but they are real historical records, preserved by survivors who wanted the world to understand what nuclear heat truly does. After the explosions, American scientists from the Manhattan Project formed the Atomic Bomb Casualty Commission. They studied the survivors to measure radiation exposure, cancer rates, and long-term effects. But those studies also revealed a grim truth. Most deaths were not from radiation, but from burns and fires. The heat was the true killer. In the city centers, the blast incinerated people where they stood. Within 500 meters, bodies were reduced to fragments or ash. Between 500 and 1,500 meters, burns were severe enough to destroy skin layers. People further away suffered partial burns or blindness. Even glass reflected enough light to cause burns on people standing indoors. Some victims were protected only because a wall or another person cast a shadow over them. Let's move through time now to the people who built these weapons. The scientists who created the bomb understood energy, not empathy. Yet many were haunted by what they saw after the war. Physicist Joseph Rotblat resigned before Hiroshima because he foresaw this outcome. Others stayed, convinced the bomb would end the conflict quickly. But once the world saw what nuclear fire could do, they realized it had begun a new age, one where human civilization held its own extinction in its hands. The mechanics of this destruction come down to physics. When a nuclear bomb explodes, it releases energy in 3 main forms: blast, thermal radiation, and nuclear radiation, The thermal portion can account for up to 35% of the total yield. That means more than a third of the energy becomes heat and light, a burst so powerful that it can ignite skin and wood miles away. To grasp that, imagine this. The energy released by a single small nuclear bomb can equal the combustion of thousands of tons of TNT. But TNT explodes at around 4,000 degrees Celsius. A nuclear fireball can exceed several million degrees at its core, even if that temperature drops rapidly as it expands. For the first few milliseconds, it's plasma, the same state of matter found in stars. When that energy hits human tissue, it does not melt like metal in a furnace. Instead, it carbonizes. The outer layers dry, shrink, and turn black. Proteins denature, fat ignites. The result is that haunting melted look described by survivors. It is not the same as liquid melting, it's biological destruction at a cellular level. Let's float to another era, the Cold War. After Hiroshima and Nagasaki, nations raced to build bigger bombs. The United States tested the first hydrogen bomb in 1952. It was hundreds of times stronger than the one dropped on Japan. The Soviet Union followed soon after. These weapons were so powerful that the flash could cause third-degree burns on exposed skin 50 kilometers away. At that range, you wouldn't hear the blast for several minutes, but your body would already be burned. By then, the world had learned how nuclear bombs melt people not just in theory, but through evidence, experiments, and survivors' memories. Films from test sites showed mannequins vaporized, cars ignited, and houses bursting into flame. Each test was both science and warning, a demonstration of what would happen if humanity ever used these weapons again. As the decades passed, nuclear scientists shifted from building bombs to preventing their use. Oppenheimer lost his security clearance in 1954. He had become a critic of his own creation. Many of his colleagues joined peace movements. They understood that the real power of the bomb was not in its explosion, but in its potential, a deterrent that kept the world balanced on the edge of annihilation. And yet the question remained, why did human skin melt while metal sometimes survived? The answer lies in heat absorption. Skin and fabric are organic. They absorb thermal energy quickly and unevenly. Metal, on the other hand, reflects more light. That's why the shadows of railings, ladders, and human bodies left perfect prints on nearby surfaces. Did you know that the shadows left on the walls of Hiroshima are still visible today? Silent outlines of human lives erased in a single flash. They are not ghosts or legends. They are carbon imprints burned into stone by the light of a dying city. Those shadows are history's most haunting photograph, captured without a camera in 1/20,000th of a second. Let's float over the ruins on the morning after. The city was silent except for the sound of distant fires. The air was heavy and still. Survivors wandered through rubble that no longer had streets or landmarks. One doctor said it was like walking on another planet. The sky glowed faintly red from burning buildings. Everywhere, people searched for water, calling out names that no one answered. In Hiroshima, thousands sought refuge by the river. They jumped into the water to cool their burns. Many never came out again. The river carried them away in silence. Witnesses recalled the smell of burned flesh mixed with smoke and ash. The fires had become an ocean of flame. Hours turned to days. Medical teams struggled to treat the wounded. But even those who had survived the blast began to fall sick. Their hair fell out. Their gums bled. Their skin peeled again and again. They had been touched by a new kind of injury, invisible radiation. It moved through the body quietly, breaking cells, destroying bone marrow, draining life over weeks. The survivors called it *atomic disease*. Let's drift to the outskirts where researchers arrived later. They measured shadows burned into walls, fused glass, and melted roofing tiles. At ground zero, the surfaces were rough and warped by heat. Some stones had turned smooth like river pebbles. Where people had stood, pale outlines remained. The *Hibachi shadows*, as they came to be known. Those shadows became symbols of more than destruction. They were evidence, proof of a temperature so extreme that it burned carbon from human skin directly onto solid stone. At those temperatures, between 2,000 and 3,000 degrees Celsius, the organic molecules on the surface vaporize instantly. The residue adheres to what's beneath, creating a negative image of what once lived. As scientists studied the remains, they realized the full chain of physical events. The flash of thermal radiation strikes first. The blast wave follows, then the radiation pulse, and finally the wind of the firestorm. In those few seconds, the human body experiences every element of a natural disaster at once. Fire, pressure, light, and radiation, all in one breath. Let's move to the long years that followed. Japan rebuilt its cities, but Hiroshima and Nagasaki carried scars deeper than rubble. The survivors, known as *HIHs, lived with burns that never healed, with memories of melted skin, with loss that words could not contain. Some became teachers, others peace advocates. They spoke not with anger, but with quiet urgency. This is what happens, they said, when heat becomes weapon. In the late 1940s, researchers from around the world arrived to document what had happened. They collected fragments of roof tiles, coins, bottles, all partly melted. They found that glass bottles near the epicenter had slumped and folded like wax. Metal fittings had fused with stone. At the same time, in some underground cellars, objects remained intact. The heat had been directed mostly downward and outward, leaving curious pockets of untouched space. Every piece of evidence told the same story, that human bodies had been destroyed not only by the blast, but by radiant energy itself. A force that does not touch or push but burns by sight alone. A force that travels at the speed of light. Now let's float to the decades that came after, the era of deterrence. The Cold War made nuclear weapons a paradox. They were built not to be used, but to prevent use. Nations tested bombs on remote islands. Cameras captured mock towns vaporized in slow motion. The films were silent but eloquent. Buildings folded like paper. Mannequins turned black in seconds. No music, no narration, just light and disappearance. In those films, we see the legacy of Hiroshima replayed for study, not compassion. Engineers measured pressure and temperature. Generals measured power. But the shadows on the walls had already said everything. They were the final warning left by the first victims. Let's drift back to the human scale again. The melting of people under nuclear heat is not only a tragedy of science. It's also a warning about fragility. Our bodies are mostly water and carbon. We are soft against light. What we call civilization exists within a narrow margin of safety. A few thousand degrees beyond that, and the difference between living flesh and vapor is only time. The silence that followed Hiroshima and Nagasaki lasted for years. People feared even to speak of radiation. The survivors were often shunned. Some were told not to marry, not to have children, as if their pain could be inherited. Yet they endured. They became the living witnesses of the nuclear age. Today, at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial, the ruins of the atomic dome still stand. Birds nest in the twisted steel. Grass grows between the cracked stones. Visitors walk quietly among displays of melted glass bottles, burned school uniforms, and the faint outlines of shadows preserved behind glass. The air feels still, as if holding its breath. Scientists now know far more about the physical mechanisms of melting. The instant a nuclear explosion releases its energy, photons strike atoms, causing molecular bonds to break. The body's surface proteins denature, fat boils, and tissue carbonizes. It is not literal melting but thermal decomposition, an irreversible transformation of life into carbon and ash. Yet the effect on the eye and memory is the same. The sight of burned forms is unforgettable. Let's float to a final thought, one that blends science with memory. The power that melts people can also power cities. The same nuclear reactions that destroyed Hiroshima now light homes, fuel ships, and run medical equipment. The atom is neither good nor evil. It reflects what we choose to do with it. When you stand beneath the Peace Dome today, sunlight filters through the broken roof and touches the floor where the heat once struck. The air is cool now. The shadows no longer burn, but they remain. Reminders that in one instant of unbearable brightness, the world saw what its own fire could do. The story of how nuclear bombs melt people is not a horror story. It is a truth told in light, in silence, and in shadow.